now when I travel, finding community is really important to me. That experience taught me that travel is more than just like going somewhere every 3 days. Travel is spending months in a place, getting to know the locals. I get a feeling every time when I'm on an airplane and I sort of look out of the window and I just realize like how grateful I am that firstly, I have a passport that allows me to travel to all these countries without any like visa restrictions. And second, that I'm actually able to live this life as a traveler.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Destination Happiness. Today I am joined by the lovely Dain Luka, who, well, we followed each other on Instagram for a while, so it's really great to catch up and finally get to meet you. So,
Hi, everyone. So my name's Dain. I am a 30-year-old from England. I'm currently in Thailand, but I've spent quite a few years in Australia. So I was just catching up about that because Sophie lives in Australia as well. Great country to live. And yeah, I'm excited to talk.
all right, well, thank you. It's such a pleasure to have you on. Dain, you've sent me like some more information about your history, where you've been. So I'm really excited to delve into that. So I guess it all started in 2015 for you, right? When you were a social worker, you were doing that for 5 years before you kind of left the UK. Is that right?
Yes. So I was never really interested in travel when I
Mm.
was studying. I was always like, I was really determined to be a social worker. I was really interested in that as a career. And during my period at uni, I was like, right, as soon as I graduate, I'm going to get a job, buy a house, get married, all of that stuff, blah, blah, blah. And then a few years into being a social worker, I hadn't taken like any leave because I just wasn't interested in travel. So I literally had like a whole month to take off, and my manager said, if you don't take it, you're going to lose it. So I've always been into YouTubers, and I came across like classic travel bloggers, and I started looking at YouTube videos and saw like Thailand looks amazing. So I actually drunkenly booked a flight to Thailand with my best friend, Bangkok, like no plans whatsoever. And luckily, I had the month off work. So yeah, we just went out there with some cheap backpacks from Amazon, and I think I was must have been like early 20s, but I just had the time of my life. And I was just meeting people. This was like 2018, I think. I was meeting people, and they were like, "Yeah, I've been traveling for like 2 years, 7 years, a few months." And I'm like, "How are all these people just traveling for so long?" My mind was honestly blown. So I came home from that trip and I just felt like I had itchy feet. Like going back to work, I was working in a hospital at the time, sat at the desk, and I felt uncomfortable having my shoes on because
Mm.
I wasn't traveling. You just wear like sandals or whatever. So then I decided that, right, I'm going to save up for like a year and a half, and I'm going to travel the world for a year, and I'm going to document it, and I'm just going to leave England and see what happens.
That sounds crazy. Like you were just drunk and then you decided to book some time off. And actually I had the same situation. I kind of got forced into traveling by my work. They were like, "Oh, you've got some time off. You've got to use it or lose it." They threaten you. They're like, "It's not going to roll over." So when you were in Thailand for that 1 month, like was that your very first time you had ever like experienced traveling? What kind of like things did you learn or like see that's like quite memorable for you?
That's a good question. So prior to that experience, I've been on the classic, like I've always gone to like Mallorca from a young age, like the classic Brit holiday, Spain or Greece. So I've never
Brits
really
abroad.
Brits abroad, basically, yeah,
Yeah.
all inclusive, that kind of vibe. I suppose what I learned during my trip is that there's a different way of living a life than just working a 9 to 5 in the UK. You can meet people and connect with like other like-minded people. I think that was my favorite part of the whole experience. How many friends I made. Like I was living in a place called Reading in the UK, which it's not the greatest area, but that was where like near where I've got my first job out of uni. So I just naturally moved there, and I didn't really have that many friends. I didn't really love the area I was living, but I just felt like when I was in Thailand, I felt like I was thriving. I felt like I could just be myself, and I just, yeah, felt a lot
Yeah.
happier. So yeah, I just learned that actually I do have a big interest in travel.
Cool. So when you were like before that trip, before that Thailand trip, and you were still working as a social worker then, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you think you were happy at that moment?
So I honestly was really happy. Like I loved my job. I didn't love that specific role I had. I was sort of I'd been a social worker for a few years with the local council, and then I wanted to try hospital work, and I didn't love it. So I actually mentioned to my manager when I came back from that trip, I said, "Hey, I'm thinking about taking a sabbatical, like 6 months off, a year out. What do you think? Would you give me the time off? Because when you fresh out of uni after a few years, like you just think you need job security. So I was like, I can't travel long term if I don't have a job to come back to. So my manager actually turned around and said, no, but ask me in a year's time, we can talk about it. So I wasn't really happy with that. And I actually ended up quitting that job, going to her old work as an agency worker and getting paid even more money. So it was a win-win for me because I was also, aside from social work, because I was trying to save, I was also working part time in a pub.
Yeah.
So I ended up getting paid a lot more as an agency worker because you don't get paid holidays and stuff like that. So I could quit the other job and I went to my old manager's work. So it was kind of like, sort of a finger up at the manager, like, well,
Yeah,
you
that's
didn't
you.
let me sabbatical, so now I'm getting paid more money. So bye.
I love that. Yeah, you do you.
Yeah, because I was
It's such a good company for them. It's like, well, you didn't give me the time off, so I'm going to get more money, and I'm actually going to like your ex-employer.
exactly. I think it was a bit of a burn for them, but I just didn't want to wait a year and then see if they would consider a sabbatical. So I just said, "Do you know what? I can go agency. It was a big risk because I literally had to give like 2 months notice and then get a job like the week before, but it all worked out, and it was a scary choice at the time. A good choice.
I think the scary choices are always the ones that like are worth taking.
A hundred
And if
percent.
something's not like a scary choice, then like it's probably not going to change your life that much, you
Exactly.
know?
100%.
You mentioned as well that you had decided to go sober as well. Is that right?
Yes, that is
So
correct.
what was the challenges of going sober, and what were the rewards? How come you decided that that was going to be a step you were going to take?
So if anyone is listening to this, and if you're from like the UK, you know that drinking culture is just a bit. Personally, I just find it quite toxic. Our society revolves around having a drink. You celebrate, you have a drink. Something bad happens, you have like everything just revolves around having a drink. And I was just always one of these people. I'd go out every weekend with my mates and drink, be hungover, spend all my money, and then when I quit my job and everything in 2020 before COVID, I cut down on my drinking because I wanted to save money, and it actually helped me save money by not going out every weekend. And then during the pandemic, when I felt like my mental health wasn't great, and I was like on all these Zoom calls, just waking up like with the worst hangover in the world, and I was like, so that's probably a trigger to many people who have this. Just like waking up with the worst hangover. And I'm like, do you know what? Alcohol doesn't really benefit my life in any way. So I just decided, I was like, do you know what? I'm going to give myself a year off drinking. It's only a year. I'll go back to drinking after that. And then I just felt so much better. And like my life was so much better in like every way that I just decided to carry on being sober. And it's been 4, 5 years now. I think it was like December 2020 was the last time I drank.
Oh my god! Well, congratulations! Like it's a huge achievement, and also like I bet you must get it a lot. Like, why don't you drink? And then people find it quite shocking, especially if you're in England. Maybe in Australia, not so much because there's other things to do than drinking. Like, there's so much more that you can be doing. But in England, you must get it so much like, oh, that's weird. Why don't you drink? And I'll be honest, like I used to be like that as well. I'd find it weird when other people don't drink, but now I just get it. Like I
Yeah,
don't like the drinking culture in England either anymore. And when you travel, you realize that there's plenty of other ways that you can spend your weekends, but maybe not so much in England. Like you can just go to the waterfalls, or you can go snorkeling, or you can go on a road trip. But here it's like, what pub do you want to go to?
yeah, 100%.
It's like, oh,
Yeah,
we don't want to go to that pub. We went there last weekend. Let's do something new. Let's go to a different pub.
and I think that's a lot to do with the weather as well. Like in Australia,
Mhm.
very outdoorsy. People live for the early mornings, going surfing, going to the beach. Whereas in England, there's not much to do because the weather is kind of crappy. So the only like
Mm.
so it's just the pub. It's like a natural thing, isn't it? You meet at the pub, and I really love the pub environment, like a cozy pub with a fire and a nice meal. But I don't like the sort of the mentality of just going out and drinking for the sake of it.
Yeah.
It's not great. And when you travel
No.
as well, I mean, I used to do it in my early 20s. You know, you'd go out to like, I don't know, a crazy party on a beach till like 6 a.m. And then you'd go on a day tour and you'd be dying. Now, I can't do that. Like, I think I need my 8 hours of sleep. Like, there's no way I can do that anymore.
Fast forward to 2020. So you decided on the 1st of January that's when you were going to go.
That was,
However, we all know that 2020 was a significant year for the world. And
mm.
in March, you found yourself out there traveling, and then all of a sudden, you hear news of a pandemic. So, can you tell me, like, what happened for you, like, how that was?
I actually have a really funny story about this. So this whole year was planned out. Like not necessarily the whole year, but like the first 5 or 6 months, I had flights, tours, accommodate like stuff booked. You know when you take your first big backpacking trip, you're like, I'm booking everything. I'm booking the hostel for 4 months time. Now I'm like, I don't even know where I'm
Yeah.
staying tomorrow. So I was actually
Yeah.
to be in China. I had a month long tour booked through China for March, and I was in New Zealand. So
Ooh.
1st of January, literally was like I left the UK. No, like I quit my rental, like quit my job, everything. I was like, it's just me in a backpack now. Went to America, went to New Zealand, Australia, and then it was like the end of February time, and my China tour got cancelled. I got the money back from that, so I was like, okay, whatever. And then things
Oh,
obviously started to ramp up, and it was like the beginning of March, and I was flying to Japan from Australia. Now life in Australia was very normal then. It kind of felt like, okay, everything in, I think it was like China and Italy, it seemed like there was just like this weird virus that was going around, and you didn't
right.
quite like no one quite understood what was going on. Anyway, I get on the plane at the beginning of March, and there was literally no one on the plane. This flight from Melbourne to Tokyo, and I'm like, this is kind of weird. What's going on? And then I land in Japan.
Something sneaky is happening.
Yeah, the whole world is like, shutting down. Like, and it happened so quick. It was like day by day, another country had closed. So I was in Japan for like 3 weeks on my own. There was no one in the hostels. Lots of things were closed, so it was a bit strange. I don't know if you've been to Japan, but like they don't really speak English there. So I was like in this little alien world where actually I'm in a country where they don't speak English. I don't really know what's going on because I don't watch the news. And then but then I had all these flight getting cancelled. Like I was meant to go to South Korea, the Philippines, and I was just looking to like, okay, where am I going after Japan? So I ended up flying to Singapore. I landed in Singapore and they closed the airport. They said like no one can leave. So I was like, oh great. So I was like in Singapore for a few days and I was like just figuring out what is my next step going to be. And I had literally like £1,000 of flight credit with STA because so many of my flights had been cancelled. And they said,
Yeah.
we can get you a flight back to London tomorrow or we can't help you. And I was like, and this was like the end of March. So I was like, okay, book me on that flight because I don't know what is going on. I'm on my own. It was so stressful. And I landed back in England. And I remember my dad took me to the supermarket. Like I thought he was being crazy, but he's like, you need to stock up. And there was like nothing in the supermarket. And I was like, what the hell is going on? Like it was just such an alien like experience. Like I just land back in
Like
the
a
UK
doomsday.
in lockdown. So
And as well, like, because during that period of time, like before we actually went into lockdown, like we had no idea the severity of the situation. And I remember like seeing on the news, like, oh, there's this virus. And I remember just thinking to myself, like, it'll blow over, like it's not that big of a deal. And I remember when I was at work, I was in the office and it was like in the news. And one of the people on my team said, oh, they say that this could be going on for the next year or two. And I thought, no, no way. Like, this will be fine by like next week.
yeah,
And it just wasn't. It kept getting worse and worse. And especially like if you're out there traveling by yourself and you don't speak the language, you haven't been keeping up to date with the news because, like when you're traveling, you're very in the moment. You're not worrying about things that are said on the news that are probably fake anyway. It's hard to trust different sources. And then all of a sudden, like, all your flights getting booked, that must have been absolutely terrifying for you. And there's nothing that you would have been able to compare this to, or like say to your mate, oh, like when you were in the pandemic, like back like 4 years ago, what did you do? You know, like you were just navigating this completely blind, had no idea, and nobody did. It's not like you could have gone to anyone for advice. Like you had to make these judgments by yourself.
100%. I think looking back on the situation, what I wish I did was stay in Australia, because I know a lot of people that were there the same time as me, and they've now like got residency in Australia because they had like COVID
Oh,
visas, and they, like there was like a
oh,
like those people that were there at the time, like they just couldn't leave, so they just let people stay and whatever in Australia. But obviously you weren't to know. But yeah, it was, looking
oh,
back on it now, like I was actually totally chill. I'm a very anxious traveler now, so had it happened to me right now, I would have been like stressing. But back then I was like, oh, it's fine, I'll just book a flight to Singapore tomorrow, like that works. And then I was very, very chill until I realized like, oh, this is kind of
yeah.
this.
I used to be really chill, but now I feel like I'm a bit more anxious when it comes to traveling. I wonder why that is, because normally things like that are the other way round.
So I've thought a lot about this, because I'm, by nature, I'm not like I'm a very easygoing person, but like the older I get, the more anxious I am during travels, and I think it's because when you travel, you are experiencing some really crazy stuff, and you're like put in these really weird and dangerous situations at times. And I think just the constant, not trauma, but like the constant exposure to like mental situations. I'm like, oh my god, this is happening again. When like scammed, or you're like in the back of a taxi, like, am I being
PTSD.
kidnapped?
Not only are you living through the trauma, it's
Yeah,
also PTSD from the last times that it's happened.
100.
Maybe I'm the same.
Yeah,
Maybe I'm the same. I started packing up my house yesterday. I'm in the process of moving house, but I'm not traveling yet.
yeah,
But I will be soon. And I was getting PTSD from like packing up my bags
yeah,
and saying goodbye to my family. And I was like, I'm not leaving yet. I'm just
yeah,
moving house.
yeah. You don't need to get
That's
anxious right
crazy.
now.
Right, so you got back to England in March. You seen in Tesco, all the toilet paper's gone. Everyone's stocking up on the shelves. It's like doomsday outside. How did you stay motivated to keep your travel goals alive?
Before I left, I was living with my sister and my best friend in a house that we had, and luckily they still had that house. So I just went back to the house that we were renting, and it was actually a really fun time initially. Like the whole like just the daily drinking and board games, and like life just felt kind of a bit of a joke at that time. But I knew that it was temporary, and after 3 months of really intense travel, I had an amazing 3 months. I was like, this is kind of a nice little reset. Right, I was able to go back to my old job, because they needed social workers more than ever in the pandemic, luckily. And I did a few trips during the pandemic, actually. Like, even though like it was a bit frowned upon to travel, like me and my friends, we still did a few trips when we could, like when they had like the traffic light system that was like super confusing. So I had in my mind, I'm like, right, let's just pause these plans for a year. Like, you've had your taste of this year-long adventure, it's unfinished, because I was meant to be traveling for a year, and I only got 3 months in. So I was like, I've still got some savings left. And actually, I did not. I spent so much money in those first 3 months. There was no way I was going to last a year. Like, so I was like, this is an opportunity. You have another year. And I kind of felt like a bit of relief that I can save even more money, because nothing's open. All I'm paying is rent and food, because like at that time you couldn't even get takeaway, let alone like go out with your mates. So it was like, I just used it as a big motivation. I'm like, in a year's time, I will go again. And it was a good timing, because my friend had just, when I left in July 21, my best friend just got married. It was my birthday. So we did that. I left the house that I was renting, quit my job again. And then I just said, right, I'm going to leave. And it was kind of during the pandemic still. Like, there was still a lot of countries that were closed. So in my mind, I was like, I'm just going to go to Eastern Europe for 3 months. And then 3 months turned into 3.5 years. And
And
as
you're still going.
and I'm still going. Yeah.
Wow, wow. Oh my God, I love that. So I guess you kind of like viewed it as a bit of a winter arc, like saving, like
Mm.
focusing on you, having fun, being with your friends. And maybe I guess it felt like one just big sleepover.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, it was like I was with my sister and my friend every day, so it was. I feel like a lot of people had it quite bad in the pandemic, but I felt like I didn't. I don't want to say I enjoyed it, but like the comfort of like there's no social pressure because I'm big on FOMO as well. Like if I know my friends are hanging out, and still to this day, like if I'm living my best life in Australia and I know my friends are hanging out in like London, I'm like, oh guys, I'm so jealous of you. I wish I was there. And
Yeah.
what are you talking?
Yeah, especially if it's like winter in Australia and it's like
Yeah,
summer in London and they're all in the beer garden, then you do get a bit of FOMO. I feel the same as well sometimes, but then I have to kind of just like remind myself like, look where you are.
yeah, we are very
But
lucky.
it is hard. When you finally got back out there, like you say July 21, what were some of your favorite experiences that you had?
So I started in Croatia. Really rogue travel itinerary that I had. I just booked like a one-way flight to Zagreb in Croatia, and I spent about a month in Croatia, and I made some really good friends there. And I just felt like, okay, life is good again. Like there was no masks or anything because like in England it was still very strict, but you could leave. So I was like, I'm just gonna leave because I'm sort of done with the pandemic.
Yeah, I'm done. See
I'm
ya.
like I'm out. So a few of my favorite experiences were just I think recovering from the pandemic in Croatia was so nice. Like I'd met so many people who were in the same situation as me who just sort of left their home country just like looking to travel. I did a really cool hike in Albania. So I spent about 10 weeks in Eastern Europe, which if you've ever traveled Eastern Europe, it is one of the most surprising regions of the world to travel because you just never know what's going to happen. Just like had some crazy experiences there, but one of my favorites was hiking through. So there's a village called Valbonne to Theth. It's like a hike that you can do, and you get transported. You take like a bus, a ferry, and another bus and a taxi to this one village, and then you spend like the next day hiking to the next village, and it's basically like walking through the Albanian Alps, and it was incredible. I did it on my own. I was really scared to do something like that on my own, but it was amazing.
What, on your own, like completely by yourself, or as in like, or just walking through the mountains?
So it was like a track, like a trail,
Oh,
and like, I did see people on there, but when you read mixed reviews online, like some people like don't do this hike on your own, it's not safe, and some people like best hike of my life, and I was like, do you know what? I have no one to go with. I'm just gonna do it, and it was pretty touristy in the terms of like, they transport you to the one village the night before, you hike to the next village, and then you stay in a guest house, and you go back to the main city. So it was fine, but it was incredible. And then I did a bit of the Middle East. I went to Jordan and Egypt on my one of my first group tours, which was cool. That was like 15 days, just like seeing all the highlights, and that was amazing. And then I ended up flying to Latin America, and I spent like 6 months there, and that was one of my favorite experiences. I know you've just been to Latin America, so you can attest to like it's just another level of like awesomeness. Like especially like Mexico. I sort of flew. So I popped back home. It was about October time, and everyone was like, "Don't go to Latin America with a suitcase." So I was like, "Okay, I'll fly home, change to my backpack." And then I flew to Mexico City, and everyone was like, "Don't fly there! Like it's so dangerous." And I just had the best time of my life. I loved the food, and then I really randomly ended up living there in this little surf town with this Canadian girl that I met
in Mexico.
in Mexico. So it was like my second week in Mexico, and I wanted to learn Spanish. So I thought, right, I'm going to stay at this place for like a week. I booked an Airbnb for a week in this small little Mexican town. And
Hmm.
first day at Spanish school, I meet this crazy Scottish lady who we were just on the same level, like no Spanish at all. Like we were just like, what the fuck's going on? And I ended up going to a cafe to meet her Canadian friend, and we just got on really well. And we were both like, we kind of want to stay here longer. So we ended up that day, we were walking up and down the beach looking at rentals. And we put like a deposit down on this bungalow, like literally on the beach. It was amazing. And it was
Love
like
that.
in this apartment hotel complex. And it was just like loads of people the same age of us just living in this hotel. And we had like this bungalow at the front with the pool. So it was just a really weird time in my life and that's where I applied for my Australian visa.
Right.
It was just amazing. And I always think about that was probably one of my favorite experiences. Just take it slow. Like I was there for like 3 months and just like finding my yoga class and having my friends and going to the supermarket. Like
Yeah.
it was just so,
Slow travel.
yeah,
I love that spontaneity as well. How you were just like, right, you met this girl, you met her friend at a cafe. You're like, right, let's go and put a deposit down right now, right here, right now at a bungalow on the beach.
yeah. It was so
Living
weird.
our surf life, our yoga life. And did you learn much Spanish?
I did. So I was a Spanish. So I lived this really weird life, and I really miss it because I was working on my YouTube, but I wasn't like getting paid from any like remote work or anything at this time. So I was like trying to like figure out the YouTube thing and my website. So like my daily routine would be like, okay, I'd go to Spanish school in the morning for 2 hours. I'd come back for lunch, hang out with my friend Ellen, who like we're like best friends now. We like travel everywhere together with. And then I'd go to the beach and do my Spanish homework, and then we'd go to yoga class. And I was just doing this every day. I'm like, what the hell is my life right now?
This sounds incredible. It sounds like you had a really good routine and
Yeah,
you kind of just stumbled upon it.
it was just like the unexpected happened. Like in my head, I was like I had this whole plan that I was going to go from Mexico City down to Colombia, and I just spent so much time in Mexico. Like I planned to spend like a month there in Mexico, and I ended up spending like 3 there. And then I did a bit more of Latin America, so we went down to like Costa Rica, Nicaragua. Had an amazing time there. Flew back to Mexico to do like a bit more because I was just obsessed with it.
Like, I want to go back.
Yeah,
Miss the burritos.
yeah, the burgers and the tacos.
Yum. So right, so then you said that you applied for your Australian visa, so you were kind of ready to move on. So you had already been in Australia from 2020, is that right?
Yeah, so I did. So I went to part of my year long initial trip. My story's kind of all over the place, but my initial trip when I quit in 2020, I did 6 weeks, the classic East Coast backpacker trip. And to
Yeah.
be honest, I had a really good time. Like, made some friends, saw some cool stuff, but I didn't love it. I was like, Australia's nice, but I preferred New
Okay.
Zealand. So in
Right.
my head, I was like, because going to both those countries, I was like, I'm going to do a working holiday visa in Australia or New Zealand after this year long world trip. So when I was in Mexico, I was about like 7 or 8 months into my sort of year long trip. And I was like, right, I'm kind of getting not bored, but like tired of like traveling. I think that's why I stayed in Mexico for so long. I was like, right, I need
It
to,
does get to that
my
point.
savings are dwindling. I need to figure out my next step for like, in the next few months. So I was just waiting for New Zealand to open up their borders, but they didn't. So I noticed that Australia, they opened up really quickly. So I was like, right, I'll apply for a visa for Australia. And that was like December 2021. And then I didn't actually get my visa back till the first of March in 2022. So,
Oh, so it took a long
it
time.
took a long time. And I remember I was in Nicaragua at the point I was on this I was on an island called Little Corn in the Caribbean, and there is no electricity half of the daytime. There's no electricity on the island. I was there for about a
Huh.
week, and you have to like fly there, get a taxi, and then there's a small boat to this island where there's no cars. There's like a population of 400. Like it's really just like nothing going on there, but I loved it. And I just remember like waking up one morning when the Wi-Fi had come on, when the electric turned on, and I saw like the email pop up like Grant notified.
Oh, I love that
Yeah, so
email.
I was like, this is the best.
It's
I
the
really,
best
like I
thing.
was so happy.
And
It
you were just ready now. You were just
was
ready to get
ready.
out there and you were ready to
Yeah,
start working again.
exactly.
Not so much the travel side, but just to like maybe find a new place to settle down for a bit and
Yeah,
stop living out of your backpack and
100%.
stop traveling every 3 days to a new
Yeah.
place.
Yeah, 100%. And it was really funny because I was looking at flights back to London, thinking I'm going to have to book a flight home soon because I'm going to run out of money. And literally, it was like day by day, I was looking at Skyscanner as you do, and then just up. So I was like, right, instead of London, we're going to Sydney. So
Yeah.
I ended up I wanted to do like one last banger of a trip. So I ended up flying to San Diego, and then I drove up the coast to San Francisco for like over 2 weeks. And then I
I
flew
love that.
to Sydney from there. And it was just like the perfect end. By the time I got to Sydney, like I just was ready to like chill and relax. And like it was around, I don't know if you were in Australia during the La Nina, the like crazy rain.
That was in 2022, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Or was that before? I was in Brisbane at this point.
Oh, okay. So I started off in Sydney, and it rained, no joke, every day for like 3 or 4 months. So it was perfect for me because I was like, I don't want to travel. Like full time travel is amazing. It's not glamorous at all. Like there is a point when you get tired and you're like, I don't want to live out of a bag. I don't want to get in a
Yeah.
taxi again. I don't. I'm done. I'm done. So I was just like, I'm so ready to embrace just like working like a normal job, like just be normal, like because just I don't know, you could probably relate to this. You just get to that
I
some.
can definitely relate to you. You do have to find a balance, and it's like you go from one extreme to the other. You go from like living in backpack, like living out your backpack, like jumping from hostel to hostel, going all these incredible experiences, but it does really knacker you out.
Yeah,
And like you're doing so much that you forget all the fun activities you've done because you're doing it like day by day. It's like, right, let's go on a hike, let's go to a waterfall, let's do this, let's do that. And then it gets to the point where like I just need to not do anything. I just need to lie down for like a week and
yeah,
like watch Netflix or something or just
yeah.
chill. So I completely relate to you. So you moved to Sydney. What did life look like for you then?
So my first month in Sydney, I was living in a hostel, and that was nice because it was just after the pandemic, so the hostel was very quiet. Like I made some friends. I got a job as a sort of unqualified social worker in like a homeless center. So I was like, when you first get a job after like a long travel stint, you're like, I need cash ASAP.
Yeah,
My bank's
yeah.
not looking good. So I spent a few months there, and then I ended up meeting my now ex partner during that time. So it was just a really chill life. Like I was working, like hanging out with my ex, and just like enjoying living in Sydney, and just enjoying like living a normal life, like watching TV, sitting on the couch. Like I'd moved into like
Yeah, sitting on a sofa is something that's you really underestimate
yeah,
like the value of. But when you've been traveling and it's not something you think about. There's no sofas in a hostel, or maybe there is, but like it's not a nice one. You
yeah,
get back, you rent out an Airbnb for like a few days. You're like, wow, it's got a
yeah,
sofa. Wow, a real
luxury.
shower.
Yeah, real family.
No buckets here.
Yeah, you don't have to wear your shoes in the bathroom at all times.
Oh my god, yeah, it's just so nice.
My one is the fluffy towels. When like I have a kind of a semi normal towel that I travel with, but like I'm in a hotel at the moment, like an apartment hotel, and I have like actual fluffy towel, like full size. I'm like, this is all I need. Just it's my little
An
luxury.
actual bath, you're just like,
Yeah,
wow, I'm gonna take this with me. I squeeze
yeah,
it in my bag.
yeah.
So, was there a moment when you were in Australia, like between then and now, that you thought, actually, I want to make this my home forever?
There has been quite a few moments like that. So after about 6 months living in Sydney, I ended up moving down to a small coastal city called Wollongong. It's an hour south of Sydney, and it's so beautiful. And I'd never heard of it before, and it was just like it's just full of like insane beaches. There's this really cool bridge there, and just like my daily routine was like I was living in a nice apartment, a 10-minute walk from the beach. Every morning, I'd make a coffee, walk down the beach, listen to a podcast, maybe go for a swim. And I'm like, oh
Mm,
my God, this is amazing. And just seeing it's the small things as well, like there being a blue sky, like every day. Like, okay, it might rain or it might be a bit cloudy, but like 9 times out of 10, it's going to be a blue sky today. And that just like really lifts your mood up. And I think just the travel. So I spent just over 2 years in Australia on the working holiday visas, and I think I traveled quite a lot of it. And it was always during my times on road trips or camping that I would really appreciate how beautiful Australia is, especially in like the outbacky places.
yeah.
I just love that it's so diverse. Like, if you want the mountains, you've got that. If you want, city life, you've got that. If you want beaches, the outback, the desert, like there's everything. And I'm like, I can see why many Australians don't leave because you have everything here. So I
Yeah, it's so
just,
beautiful.
yeah,
I completely agree. Like, it is the small things. It's not really like anything in particular, but like the culture there is just like so relaxed and laid back, and every day feels like a Saturday, and every evening feels like a Sunday, and people don't live to work, they work to live.
Yeah, and they're so friendly.
It's so friendly, and like it's just so normal to just finish early and go to the beach and then just continue like your day as if your whole day doesn't revolve around work. But I guess in England, you wake up early, you go to work, you're probably miserable, you come home, maybe like go to the gym, come home, make dinner, and then by the time you've done all that, you've got to go to bed ready for the next day. And I don't know why, but the days in Australia just feel a bit longer, even though they're not, like the sunsets, they don't even have daylight savings in some places, but it's just so different. It's so similar, but so different.
I think it's why it's so easy for us Brits to go and move there, because it's like culturally similar, but with the night
Mm,
lifestyle. It's like, your
yeah.
day revolves around the beach. Like, okay, go for a beach walk before work, finish work, go for a swim or go to the beach. Like, yeah, like you said, in England, it's the other way around. Like, you're just sort of like living to work, really. Like, your day revolves around work, and that's so boring to
I
me.
know. I'm trying to get my family to move out there. I'm just trying to be like, you're gonna love it, and they're like, not sure. I'm like, I've done it. You can do it as well. They're like, oh, maybe. Come on, you can do this. You'll love it.
Have they been before?
No, they haven't been. I'm trying to get them at least to come out on holiday and see what it's like. Have your family?
My family came out last year for a month, and they can see why I don't want to leave. They were like, okay, this is really nice. And it's like where I was living when Wollongong, it's, it's beautiful, but it's a very like slow, relaxed style of living, not compared to like the UK. I feel like the UK is very like go, 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 must have this, must have the best job, must have the best car. When Australia, it's just like anything goes. No one cares.
Everyone's got the same car anyway. It's a
Yeah.
white ute.
Yeah, or a Toyota or something.
No one cares if you've got like a fancy car. If anything, you probably
Oh,
get
yeah.
judged hard. Like, you can't go 4x4 in that. Look at you in your Mercedes. You look like an idiot. It's funny. When you were in Australia, did you carry on working, like creating content on YouTube?
I have consistently posted since like July 21, because I had so much free time. I was like, right, I'm going to just try and upload a video once a week. I'd upload like random things on
Yeah.
Instagram, but like looking back on it now, I'm like, it really didn't make any sense. I would just post like a nice picture with a little sunshine emoji. I'm like, no one cares. So after about 6 months of living in Australia, so it was when I moved down to Wollongong, and then I went to Asia for like 6 weeks, and that's when I realized I'm like, oh, I'm kind of in this cycle of travel, go back, get a job, quit job, travel, get another job, quit for travel, and I've noticed that actually I've been in this cycle since like 2019. So I was like, I'm just gonna try and find some sort of remote job, or like start trying to earn money online and like take it seriously. So I finally got my YouTube monetized, I think that year, like 2022. And I had in my head, I was like, right, let me just start trying to build up my income streams, because then when I'm traveling, I don't have to stop earning money. I can just carry on earning money, and like not having to not having to like get a job and then quit again.
On and off,
I
on
think
and
it's
off.
absolutely fine to do that, and I think it definitely served a place in my life. But from where I'm at now, I'm like, okay, I'm 30. I want to like save for things like a house or a camper van and stuff like that. And I'm like, I can't do that if I'm just like sinking all my money into travel. Whereas at least like right now, I'm traveling, but I'm working. So I'm like, it's more sustainable.
Is that kind of what led you to freelancing as well? Because you do a bit of that, don't you?
When I tell people what I do, it's very confusing because it's sort of all over the place. But I'm basically like a part freelancer, part content creator. So I earn money through like YouTube and like my personal brand. But then I also do like freelance works like social media management, video editing, and other marketing things. So it's a bit of everything, which I quite like, because I'm not just doing one thing day in and day out. I'm just like doing lots of different things, and I can take that with me wherever I go.
Yeah. Variety's the spice of life,
Exactly.
that's what they say. So how did you get into freelancing?
So when I moved to Wollongong, I was looking for like my first like online freelance gig, and there was a company and they were looking for a social media manager. And I'm like, I know a bit about social. I wouldn't say like studied social work. I have no expertise in social media management, but I was like, I could definitely just like schedule someone's social media for them. And like, I really love creating content. I love the creativity involved in coming up with a concept and then like, creating that piece of content. So I found it online, and luckily they were like near where I was based. So sometimes I'd go in and film the content, and then that just sort of, and they were like, we don't mind where you work. Like, they were just like, whatever. Like, so I just like, okay, well, I can keep traveling and whatever. And then it sort of introduced me to the world of freelancing. So I started looking on sites like Fiverr, and I would do some odd jobs on there. And I think once you start looking for things, like you just find out more information and more resources. You're just able to deep a bit dive in. I like that with freelancing, it's more of a consistent income. So last year was like my first year, like actually earning money as a creator and also working as a freelancer. And I think at the start of the year, I was like, right, I'm going to go all in. I'm going to be a full time content creator by the end of the year. But then I was like, I realized by the end of the year, it's really tough to do that. And money isn't consistent. So this year, my goal was, okay, earn enough money doing whatever to sustain yourself, to travel, live wherever. So my approach this year has just been like having a balance. And actually, I appreciate the freelance income because I'm like, that's a regular piece of income. Whereas like brand deals, and it's not
It's not.
consistent, unless you've got like hundreds of thousands of followers and you're getting like huge fees, brand deals, then it's not consistent. So yeah, I'd say I like the freedom of freelancing, and I've been able to connect with lots of really cool brands and businesses, but I don't know if I want to do it forever because at the moment, I like that there's lots going on, but it's also difficult to manage and juggle. Like when you have multiple clients asking for different things, like time zones, like I work with some clients in Australia and some in America. So it's just like, I feel like I'm being pulled everywhere, but like I was able to go back to Europe for like 2 months and still work and money. And now I'm in Thailand. So it has its pros and cons.
It comes with its pros and cons. Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's got its pros and cons. Yeah, you got the freedom, the flexibility, but maybe not like so much the consistency or stability as like something else, like maybe going back to social work might give you. So yeah, it has its pros and cons. So, what's your plans next? Do you have any new adventures like planned up? Anything that you're gonna do next?
So I'm in Thailand at the moment, and I'm going to base myself here. I've got my third year working holiday visa approved. So I'm looking to go back to Australia at some point this year because I do really miss it. And like I've not had, so I ended up actually leaving Australia in March because my visa expired. So I ended up moving to New Zealand because why not? So I ended up doing a working holiday visa there. So I haven't really had a base since March. And it's much as it's been amazing, like I've, you know, been in New Zealand, Australia, Europe, and now Thailand. I am again like how I felt before, I am craving some consistency in like where I'm living or like having an exercise routine or just not like at the moment I'm doing like 10 days in each place just so I can work and explore because this is another thing with being a digital nomad is you actually have to work. Like digital nomad looks glamorous online, like people working with a laptop at the beach. Now, mate, I've been sat in my hotel room all day working. Like I have a nice view, but I'm inside, So it's just
Yeah, I don't know if that would be for me. Maybe. I'm not
it's
sure.
definitely something I'm getting used to because you kind of feel one, you feel bad that you're not out exploring and you're working on a laptop. But then like today, like I went to the beach. I went and got an iced coffee and I just walked down to the beach. And I'm like, what the hell? Like this is amazing. Like I'm just on my lunch break and I'm just on an amazing beach in Thailand with a nice coffee.
You must get desensitized to it
I,
slightly.
I
Am I
I
right?
do, but then like today I had this moment, and I even sent a picture to my dad, like as a joke, like on my lunch break, like with the iced coffee in hand, And he was like, "Are you on a
Yeah.
tour?" And I was like, "No, like I'm just having a break from work for the day. Like, and this is literally down the road from where I'm staying."
You want to talk?
Yeah, so it's definitely been a transition because when you're traveling like full time or not digital nomading, you can go out exploring every day, which comes with its disadvantage of you do become desensitized. So I think the positive thing about digital nomading is like, okay, I'll work half the week, but then like the other half of the week I can do whatever I want. And this is actually funding me to be here. And like I can go to the beach on my lunch break, or if I don't want to work today, I'm like, okay, I'll do that tomorrow, or I'll just go to the beach or go on a tour. But I think it's just about finding that balance.
Yeah, it gives you a bit more balance also as well. Like, yeah, you said the funding. And I guess, I don't know if it's the case for you, but sometimes when you're just constantly traveling, like living a hedonistic lifestyle, it gets a bit boring. And you're like, I want something like now to challenge me. Like, I've had enough of the beach. I want to go and do something.
I want to go to a mountain.
Yeah, like I know for me, it's just like I
Yeah,
want to work. It gets boring just like having
yeah.
fun all the time.
Maybe
That sounds
maybe
crazy, but yeah, I
digital
do feel
nomadism might suit you then, like half working, half traveling. So
that.
I think heading back to Australia in the next few months, and then when I go back to Australia, I've got like my final third year working holiday visa. So I'm like, this is the year I have to start out residency,
Fingers
or
crossed you can get
or then
PR.
I have to accept that England is my fate for my future.
Yeah, well, I guess it's not news. It's not Australia or England. There's so many other countries. Maybe you haven't found somewhere that you. I'm thinking the same. Like, I would be so heartbroken if I can't stay in Australia forever. But like, my friend's just been deported, and honestly, like, I cried. He told me over the phone. He's been living there for like 4 or 5 years, and he told me that he had 2 weeks
Oh,
to leave. Like, he's
that
got a
sucks.
house, he's got his
No,
dog, he's got his job, and I honestly, I just started crying when he told me, and I thought, like, this is real.
100%.
I could not. I've got my heart set on it, but it might
Yeah,
not happen, and I just have to
100%.
accept that there's a
It's a
possibility it
harsh
won't.
world. Like, I'm just in the process of getting a skills assessment,
Really.
and I've been waiting like three or
Yeah.
4 months now. And like, if this assessment says no, if it's not positive, I cannot. I have to marry an Australian. That's my only option. you know.
Yeah, I know everyone jokes to me and says, "Oh, just marry an Aussie," and I'm like, I don't trust Australians, first of all, and second of all, I'm not relying on someone else. But now I think
Yeah,
maybe
just
I'll
send
have
your
to.
hinge to Australia right now and start the process.
I'll just be
Yeah.
there like, "Hey, I'm coming, English girl incoming." I was gonna ask you, but I feel like maybe I already know the answer, but maybe not actually. So, what does home mean to you now? I don't necessarily mean where, but what does home mean to you at this moment?
So I think home is a feeling for sure. Like, I think when I was in Australia, I had this interesting, I say these interesting feelings came up. So back in England when I lived there, I would dread going home from my holiday. Like you go to the airport, you land in London Heathrow, it's raining, you're like, no. But in Australia, like when I knew that I was flying back to Sydney Airport, going to Wollongong, I was so excited. I'm like, yes, let's go home. Like for me, that's how I knew that Australia felt like home to me because I was actually excited to come back. Like, oh, I get to go to my favorite beach. I
Yeah.
get to see my friends again. I can go to my coffee shop. So I think
Yeah.
Australia feels
Oh.
like home to me. But at the moment, my home is where my suitcase is. And I feel like it's been like that for a long time now. Like, last night I got to my hotel, opened up my suitcase, put my like French press in the kitchen, unpacked my pajamas, and
Carry your French
I am a
press.
coffee snob. And because I knew
Oh my gosh, that's
it's my
hilarious. All your limited space in
no,
your backpack. So you've sacrificed jumping
I
space.
am, I say a bit of a. They say when you travel, you end up going lighter and lighter. My suitcase weighs 24 kilos. I always have to pay for the max, and
Oh my
I have,
god.
but I've got like
Jesus.
I say a few of my things that I have in there is I always have coffee grounds, a French press, which isn't that big. It's kind of just like a small one. And then I have things like a laptop razor and like a mouse and stuff just to make my life comfortable. Like I can wake up, make myself a coffee, and do work and my laptop is like a normal level, just like things like that. And I think maybe that's the digital nomad thing coming out, like just being comfortable. I've got like 3 pairs of pajamas in my suitcase. I would never travel with that, but I'm like, I didn't know what was coming back.
Yeah, I get you. And actually, like, is that all your belongings, or do you have somewhere to store more things?
So I have so I was living in an apartment with my ex and in Australia, and I still have a small amount of things there, but really most of my stuff I have with me. And like I don't like I remember when I landed in Australia, I honestly had like 3 t-shirts, like 2 pairs of underwear, and I was like, oh damn, I had my laundry was ruined in a freak laundry incident in Costa Rica, and basically all my clothes turned blue. So I had to get rid of all of them. And I traveled Latin America in, like you go on a tour and they give you a t-shirt. I don't know if you went to Nicaragua, but like
Yeah.
everyone goes and does this volcano boarding, which I did. And I spent like the most of 6 weeks in a volcano boarding t-shirt because I didn't have any clothes.
That's funny. Yeah, I love a
Me
hostel
too.
t-shirt. Oh, I got my
Souvenirs.
Silk Play train.
So good.
They're so good.
So yeah, home is where my suitcase is, to answer your question.
I'm just getting rid of all my stuff now. I just
Yeah.
need to condense and then move back to Australia, and that's the plan. So
Yeah.
I feel you. I feel you. We've talked about the past, we've talked about the present, we talked a bit about the future. But I just wanted to ask you, like, I'm gonna keep this consistent, like in all my episodes, just have this little section, your moment of transformation. So can you tell me, like, maybe we've already touched on it, but like one significant event that has happened that has completely just like set the meaning of travel for you?
That's a really good question. Is that a positive or like a negative thing? Like, what is that?
My mind would go to a positive thing, but if you want to go on to a negative thing, then that's completely fine. Or you could do both.
Okay. I would say I get a feeling every time when I'm on an airplane and I sort of look out of the window and I just realize like how grateful I am that firstly, I have a passport that allows me to travel to all these countries without any like visa restrictions. And second, that I'm actually able to live this life as a traveler. And that happens obviously like most of the time when I'm on like on an, when you're doing like main character moment, like looking out the airplane window like every time. But I'd probably have to say like one of my most significant moments would be in Mexico with my friend that I met and just like living this dreamy little life of like it just really and also my phone. I didn't have a phone at this time as well because a wave went over my bag. So and this town did not have internet. So if you wanted to use the internet to do your emails, bear in mind this was 2022, you had to go to the Selena cafe to like log on to your laptop, connect to their Wi-Fi. That experience taught me that travel is more than just like going somewhere every 3 days. Travel is spending months in a place, getting to know the locals, getting to know your favorite coffee shop or your yoga teacher, and just like building a community. And I think now when I travel, finding community is really important to me. Like when I was in New Zealand, I was living in a hostel for like 3 or 4 months. I had the best time because I had a community around me. And I think that's what I see. I had all my best friends with me. We hung out every day. And it just was like the best feeling to know that, like, and I think that's the best part of travel is sharing it with other people, right? Like if you can go to the most gorgeous place in Bora Bora, but if you're on your own, you're not going to have as good of time as if you're with your mates, right?
Absolutely. So for you, it's all for me. My moment of transformation. I actually haven't thought about it, but do you know? I think when you say community, I can feel you on that because before I left Australia this year, I was living in Airlie Beach, and I had only just moved there in November, so it wasn't for long. But then Christmas came, and I hadn't really like made any like friendship groups because the nature of the place, like it's very touristy, so you meet people but then they're just leaving like after a few days, so I felt kind of a bit lonely while I was there. But then when I was in Panama, we went to these group of islands, and when I initially got there I thought, wow, like I couldn't live here, I'd get so bored. All they had was like a volleyball net, and the beach, which is lovely, but for me, like I
Yeah.
just need a bit more. But then I noticed like how close the communities were who were living there. they would like go out and they would play together, and like they were just really close knit. And I kind of just realized that actually it's all about the connections that you have and the relationships that you have with those people. That's what I think is important in life. I feel like I've kind of realized this year just like how much those like family and friendship relationships are. And so yeah, I just think that that's
Oh,
really important.
100%. Yeah. And especially with family and friends, like, the more you travel, the more I think you appreciate those relationships. Like when you go back, like when I was back
Yeah.
recently, I really
Yeah,
cherish just like spending every day with my friends and family. And I'm like, wow, I just really have such good people in my life. I need to just, be grateful for that.
for sure, for sure. Okay, and then just like one last thing as well. Do you have a happiness hack that could be like any advice or like any tips that you do to stay happy, or even a philosophy that you have to keep positive, especially while traveling?
My happiness hack is, and I struggle with this because I'm a very like happy-go-lucky person. So when I'm not feeling so good, I really struggle because I'm like, oh, I felt so happy yesterday. Like, why am I sad today, or why am I anxious today? So whenever I'm feeling anxious or sad or a bit down, I just like remind myself, hey, tomorrow is a new day. Just like get through today, do something that makes you feel like you're at home, whether that's like just doing some yoga or a walk. Well, my thing is, I like the inner basic person in me is going to Starbucks, getting a coffee, and going for a walk. That helps me so much more when I'm having a bad day because it reminds me of like being at home, just like going for a walk, just get outside. Just get outside. That's like the biggest thing for me. And just like being grateful for like where you are right now. Because I think we've spoken about this a bit. When you're constantly experiencing so many things, it gets boring. There's only so many temples you can see before you're like, oh, I've seen that. So it's just like actually taking a step back and be like, okay, no, actually, I should be grateful that I'm seeing this right now. And I'm grateful that I'm able to be in this country and traveling. And I think just doing a bit of gratitude journaling can be really,
Yeah, love it. For me, it's
yeah,
just going to the gym. If I'm at the gym,
oh, that's
I'm
good.
at my
Yeah,
happy
gym's
place.
always going to help.
Perfect. All right. Well, Dane, is there anything else that you would like to add? Anything you'd like to share with everyone listening?
I don't think so. I think we've spoken a lot. Yeah, thanks for listening. I would just say go out there and travel. And I actually always say this to people. If you have the idea that you want to travel or move to Australia, just go and do it. Because if you don't like it, you can always go back home. But like the older you get, the harder it becomes to like go and travel, move to Australia. So just whilst you have the ideas, just do it. There's never a good time in your life to do it. You just have to plan and yeah, just go for it.
I completely agree. Okay, well, it's been such a pleasure having you on. Where can we find you on socials?
You can find me on Instagram at Dain Lucas. It's DainLuka, and then on YouTube as well at Dain Luka.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you so much. And it's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you. It's been nice to chat to you.
You too. If you like this episode, please make sure you follow along on Spotify and hit that notification bell so that you are notified every time a new episode comes out. Season 2 is imminent and I'm very excited to be sharing with you this new content. Also, don't forget to share with your friends and family if this resonated with you. I'm very excited to spread the word about destination happiness, so follow along and I will see you in the next episode.